you suggest?
Okay. Of course, to ensure that the race prospers would mean that the individual would have to join the collective in some way and join in collective action, because the race cannot prosper with individuals acting as individuals, but with individuals acting as groups. And that means then we should join groups and be part of groups that are about achieving particular and specific things that advance the interests of our race. It means then that we should examine our own capabilities, interests, talents, and inclinations, and look around for a group or create a group that has a mission that's very important to our advancement as people. We should learn how to even operate in groups and to operate as parts of groups, because power, by definition, essentially is a group function, not an individual function. And power is not possessed by individuals, it's possessed by individuals who belong to powerful groups. And powerful groups gain their power from the nature of their organization and by the strategies and tactics they use in reference to other groups and in reference to the problems that they're solving, you see. So when you look, say, in the 1960s during the Civil Rights era, look at the tremendous power that was generated by black folk walking together, you see, or black folks sitting at a lunch counter together, or black folk deciding just to line themselves up in a particular way, or black folk deciding not to do something together, not to ride the bus together, not to shop, you see. And it is when we then become part of group actions that we then multiply our individual power, and then we advance our race and nation as a group and as a people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This question is, of course, for you, but I would like you to direct the answer directly to the young people that are gathered here today. And it has to do with the surplus population that you mentioned. All right? By the middle of the next century, the world population will double. There's an increased mechanization of labor. There's also going to be a shortage of water. All right? This will inevitably bring about, also I'd like to add to that, there's also a shrinking in the world's grain production is not keeping up. So when you have such a large group of people, I'm talking about African people globally, that are going to be basically, who cannot defend themselves, nor find a place within the economic niche in the world. Basically, I think that these children are going to have to be taught that they're going to have to struggle for their position in the world.
Yes.
That there's going to be increased conflict, not less.
Right. Okay. Thanks for bringing that up. It's a very, very important question and a very, very important issue. Because, of course, when I was talking about the crisis in white supremacy and the economic crisis, I wanted to get across the point that crisis also represents opportunity. We should not look at then those things that I listed and assume then that means we should give up. As I think Richard Nixon, someone says, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And in a sense, when I read the kind of thing that I read and I talk about the kind of things that I've talked about, I'm talking to the tough. And so if you're truly tough, then this should be an invigorating message. It's not a message to depress you, but to really motivate you to say, hey, if the world's resources are getting smaller or are shrinking, if there's increasing scarcity, then it is time for me, and I'm speaking in terms of our people, to see to it that we get an appropriate share of those resources. To a great extent, when we talk about racism and we talk about the status quo, to a great extent the status quo is built on the idea that resources are not limited less. And therefore, some group tries to organize not only itself, but other groups so that it can get its share or more than its share of the limited resources. And as we look then and see these resources becoming more and more scarce, our job opportunities become more and more scarce, we have to become very tough-minded and decide that we are not going to be the people with on the short end of the stick. It's very important for you to notice, to learn to read business statistics, and to learn to read employment statistics. Why, for instance, do you get the statement that the economic system grew at a rate of 1.6? You know, you hear that often. Or the economy grew at 1.8. Well, what does that really mean? What it really means is that if you have a growing population, the economy has to grow as fast or faster in order for the new people coming into the job markets to have jobs available to them. An economy that is not growing, or that is going too slow, that it is not creating new jobs, or not creating enough new jobs, it means at some point the population and the number of people who may even be qualified for jobs will outnumber the number of jobs available. And as I told you earlier, this creates severe problems. This means that often a nation which may at one point had peaceful relationships between ethnic groups, and may at one point had law and order, may, because now each group is struggling to be the one to get the lion's share of the jobs because there are not enough jobs going around. That means that nation then may start becoming disorganized. That means crime increases, racism may increase, just general social order can change. So this is the reason why you have to recognize that this dream that black folk and white folk are going to live together one day, and that, you know, all of us are going to, you know, black and Chinese and Japanese, everybody's just going to have a wonderful time. That is based on an assumption. It is based on the assumption that the U.S. economy will continue to grow at such a rate that it will have enough jobs and opportunity available for all people. If it grew at that rate, then you could possibly have that dream come true. But if it does not grow at that rate, that means that you got a lot of people competing for scarce resources. We are now at that stage in this country. We're not only at that stage in this country, we're reaching that stage in the world. The economy in Africa, for instance, on the whole, is only growing at about 1.2%. And yet, its population is growing between 3 and 4%. That means the number of people that are being born, the number of people who say theoretically may be trained for new jobs, is 3 times the number of jobs available. That is a scenario for economic disaster. When you compare that to the amount of water available, and when you compare that to the amount of food that is available, which is of course related to water and other things, you can begin to see that Africa will be beset with tremendous political and economic problems as its population outstrips its resources and its growth. The United States, if Clinton does not create new jobs, does not to some degree reindustrialize this country, will also be facing a similar situation. And there's only a couple of solutions to this problem. And that is, either you get used to living in chaos and a tremendous amount of ethnic conflicts and fights, or some ethnic group is going to have to pay the price and disappear. Or some ethnic group is going to have to increase its productivity and growth such that it can feed its population. And that means that the African nations are going to have to speed up their economic development and their growth, learn new scientific methods and do other things in order to feed their population and to increase the quality of life. But, ladies and gentlemen, the same thing is true about Africans in America. The African American population